G'day everyone, I'm Susan from Australia and I work as a physiotherapist in our local community. I actually live on the tiny island that you would find on the bottom of Australia, and our population is about 500,000 people. My main area of work is in respiratory health and respiratory physio, so I do a lot of work with the BiPAP machine and with clients who have motor neuron disease. As we know, motor neuron disease is a relentless condition. It's a condition that results in continuous changes and adaptations to every element of that person's life who is diagnosed, from eating, drinking, sleeping, their job, their friendships, their relationships, you name it, every element. We see this condition slowly strip away elements of a person, their identity, and then they are left with a body that no longer works like it used to, and a mind filled with questions of the future and what is to come. One of the vital companions in this journey for a lot of people is the BiPAP machine, and I'm well aware in this room that maybe not everyone knows what a BiPAP machine is, but I think most of us know what obstructive sleep apnea is. And in order to treat obstructive sleep apnea, we use the overnight breathing machine or the CPAP device. And the CPAP device delivers a continuous positive airway pressure from the machine to allow that person to ventilate well as they sleep. BiPAP can be also used to treat obstructive sleep apnea in some cases. It is very similar in its mechanism, but it uses two different pressures. One pressure as you breathe in and a second pressure as you breathe out, just so you can get an idea of it. When a patient's first introduced to BiPAP, it can be a beacon of hope. It can help them with their sleep quality, their fatigue, which we've heard over the last couple of days is a huge element of the condition. And it can also help to bring a little bit of life back into the body. It also helps with the dreaded feeling of breathlessness. For some people, they're at that stage of their condition. But as motor neuron disease evolves, so does the purpose of this machine. Because of the muscle weakness that comes with their condition, the BiPAP machine starts off as a device promising hope, and then it subtly shifts into a machine that is providing full-blown long-term ventilation. We don't have a lot of, in my state, we don't have, I think, anyone who's tracheostomized for their ventilation, so we do rely on the BiPAP machine for that. This shift in the role of the machine, it's so slow, it's hardly noticeable, and it's hard to pick up a very defined line of when it was helping with sleep to now being a full-blown ventilatory support. The challenging thing with this is when that shift happens, you finally realize that the person is now deciding the day to remove the mask to end their life. Sorry, I forgot I had to do those. I had a client last year, I'm just going to call her Catherine, just to protect her identity. Catherine, when we met, she was on her BiPAP machine 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and she couldn't really come off of it for any more than about 10 to 15 seconds, and even the use of things like oral morphine were not really giving us much more time. So I was asked to go around and see Catherine one night. She was having a lot of trouble with secretions getting caught in the back of her throat because the drugs that she was on was causing them to become really thick and also get really stuck. And I just remember going around to her house and heading into a lounge room. This is like the perfect space, actually. And she was sitting in her electric wheelchair. with her eye gaze machine, and there was an empty seat next to her for me. I walked in and sat down, and she started typing on her eye gaze machine. I've got a question that I really want to ask you. And me, in my casual nature, just went, sure, go for it. And she continued to type this. What happens when my BiPAP mask comes off? And I just stopped for a second. And I looked at her and said, do you mean for good? And she nodded. Whoa, what a question. I sat for a long time. And then I proceeded to answer. But the words that I used were cold. They were clinical. And I feel like now, in reflection, that they fell short of they fell short of what her question demanded, the answer her question demanded. So that evening, I went home, and in the car, the weight of the interaction with Catherine really settled in. And when I got home, I posed this question to my husband so we could talk about it. He nudged me to see beyond the surface of this question and prompted deeper introspection. He asked me, was your patient asking you what was clinically going to happen? Or was she asking you what she was going to experience? I said, it's my second R moment for the day. It was what she was going to experience. We talked about this topic for most of the night, as I felt like I needed to understand the layers that this question held, the emotional, psychological layers. Because this is not going to be the first and only time that I or us are going to be presented with this kind of question. And I really wanted to get it right. It's just part of my personality. So at the end of the night, my husband and I, we wrote a script. That was important because I was due to see Catherine the next day. When I got round to Catherine, she was in her bedroom this time, and I sat down on the edge of her bed. I held her hand and I apologised for my first attempt at answering her question and asked her if I could try again. She nodded. And this is what I said to her. At some point, you're going to make a decision that it's time to go. And when you do, and you are ready, you'll take medication which prevents the sensation of being short of breath. That when the machine is turned off, you'll slowly run out of air. It won't hurt. You'll just get sleepy. And after a while, you'll go to sleep. I cried, she cried, and then I had to clean up the mess of the crying because when you cry, you over-salivate. So as a respiratory physio, it took a while to clean that up. I could see, though, in her eyes, because she couldn't tell me, that some of her worry and fears have been eased. And it was nice to know, and I saw this again in her face, that I had spoken to her like a person, a human being, and a friend. But this situation got me thinking of many things. How do we navigate informed consent with the BiPAP machine and its evolving role? And what does it truly mean to be informed when embarking on this treatment journey? For me, I think being informed goes beyond knowing the mechanics of the machine. I think informed consent is about understanding the long-term implications of this kind of treatment, the evolving role of the machine, and most importantly, the choices and decisions that may lay ahead in the future. BiPAP isn't just a clinical conversation, and as you've heard from my experience with Catherine, it's an emotional, psychological, and ethical conversation. And that conversation needs to be navigated with care, empathy, and utmost transparency. Because we're talking about a machine that helps with fatigue relief, but we're also talking about that exact same machine deciding the day that that person will remove the mask and end their life. So, how do we have this conversation? How do you talk about, in 1 or 2 clinical consults, the benefits and hold them in one hand and talk to your patient about those benefits, whilst at the exact same time having knowledge of the day that that hope will be gone, and that day will be the most challenging day of their lives and the lives of their friends and their families. So another question came up for me. Who should have this conversation? And when I thought about Catherine's case, I came up with 14 health professionals who were involved in her care at that time. And I think we've all experienced this, and correct me if I'm wrong, but we have this assumption that somebody else is going to have this conversation. So we assume it's already happened. Oh, that's your job, that's your responsibility, that's your role. And as you can tell, no one had had the conversation in a way that Catherine understood. Given my experience, I now, as soon as the word BiPAP comes up, I am actively engaged in this conversation. It's a hard conversation to have. There's always tears. I've had people storm out of my office, but then have come back 2 or 3 months later and have said that they are grateful for that honesty. There's something, though, about being a physio, an allied professional, that I've noticed over my career. Your patients love to tell you everything. Things that really they should tell their husband and wife or even the doctor. But you get the whole story, all details, and trust me, it is all details. And I thought about that. What is that? Why us? And I thought, well, we're a profession that engages in human contact, human touch. And I think that unlocks the door to human connection and trust. And that allows us into that vulnerable space to have these difficult conversations. So in conclusion, as the world of medicine advances, we should not only be aiming for treatment or pharmacological breakthroughs. Equally vital is the evolution in the art of communication and connection. I would love to see a world where every patient feels like their clinician is not just a dispenser of clinical knowledge, but a fellow traveller in the journey of life. So, my question to everyone here. Next time we are with a patient and you get faced with a difficult conversation, I want you to ask yourself, who are you? Who are you being? Are you being a clinician? Or are you being human? Or do we need to find somewhere in between? Thank you.
Thank you so much for that excellent presentation. I'm sure there's going to be questions. I see one right up here. I think, yeah, go ahead. Oh, there's two up here. Okay, Allison has it. It should work if you just start talking. Or we switch out microphones.
Thank you. Okay. Oh, yeah, that's better. Yeah, Susan, thank you for that beautiful presentation and the way that you framed that conversation. It was so perfect. And so my question for you is, you did such a brilliant job in answering the true question that you heard, not the question that was necessarily communicated to you. And so you created a sense of understanding for Catherine. My question is, what support can you offer once that understanding occurs? Because that's a really difficult moment in time. That's two parts. It's understanding that answer and then coping with that answer as well.
For me, I think it's just making sure that we follow up on these conversations. And just asking the patient how they're feeling about it all. Like, we're very, the word's clinical, but it's very cut and dry and, black and white, and we're not delving into these emotional conversations enough, I don't think. And how do you feel about the conversation we had yesterday? Was that challenging for you? Because it was challenging for me, and just having that interaction on a human level, humanity level, and being real with your patients. I think they respect that, but definitely following up with it and where their headspace is at. And then if it's not settled, and honestly I don't think it ever will be, their headspace will be settled on a question like that, you just keep following up.
And are there other team members then that you could, like, we have a mental health specialist, so if I feel like it's outside of my comfort zone, I've stepped maybe too far, or they've asked me a question I can't answer, then I would refer them to her. Definitely. The use of in Australia we have our support coordinators, we have our social workers, we even have support networks within the palliative care team as well. So we do have a lot of options. We are very blessed. Yeah. And Rick, do you still have a question? Down here in the front, the gentleman in the wheelchair with the pink flamingos all over his legs.
Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you, because today you had that conversation with me, and I am now completely settled, sorted. So thank you. So welcome. I think you're such a courageous person, and I admire you immensely. Thank you for coming and talking about this. You're very, very welcome.
All right. Thank you, Rick, for making us all cry now. There is an online question.
This is from Kevin Robinson from Niels. He says, you carry a heavy load. Who do you talk with, and where do you get support within the system?
I actually have a clinical psychologist that I see on a regular basis, because it is heavy work and there's only so much of your own bucket. I'm not sure if you guys have heard about the bucket analogy in health. You can only give out so much, and then you have to learn how to refill your bucket. So I generally check in with a clinical psychologist once a month. But if I also get a difficult case, because I also work in pediatrics, And I also have a 4.5-year-old daughter, so there are lots of parallels there. I'll just book an appointment and a session and have a debrief. I also have an extremely supportive husband, and he is always, as you can tell, he's always willing to help me understand situations on a very deep level, and I get a lot of support from him as well. Yeah.
And I believe there's one more question over here.
Yeah, question from Iceland. Thank you for this, but should this not be addressed when you get the machine? So it's part of the process that you get it to breathe, and when you park it or take it off, you die.
It's a very complex system where we are, and as you saw by the list of people, we have a, who's going to have that conversation? It could be the neurological consultant, the neurological nurse, the respiratory consultant, respiratory nurse. Then we subcontract out of our hospital system to another company to actually set up the machines, and then someone like me is involved. But it definitely needs to be somewhere in those initial conversations, for sure. Yeah. Definitely.
All right. Thank you for the excellent questions, and thank you so much for this presentation. You might get more questions.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.